Welcome back to the Shanti Ma podcast. If you dig the show and want to show some love, please head on over to patreon.com/Shanti Ma and become a patron. With your support, I will update sound and video quality and maybe even be able to feed myself. Speaking of food, we have a very interesting guest on the show today who's going to shed some light on that very subject and how to do it whilst being sustainable. But first, I'd like to take a moment to thank Vanessa Vasquez for her generous donation to Love Braj. Her contribution went toward feeding some very hungry people in Vrindavan, India during these desperate COVID times. There are so many people in this world who are much less fortunate than us. And that's why, if you'd like to donate, head on over to radharaman.org, RADHARAMAN.org. It's completely nonprofit and it's just a really good thing to do. Okay, let's dive in. Today's guest plans on being completely sustainable by 2025, in which he will toss his phone, sell his car, and go back to an old but new way of life. He is in the process of getting 10,000 signatures to support his cause, and at that point will legally change his last name to Sustainable. We're about to cover his mission over the next 5 years and how he plans to accomplish this mighty feat. We even get into some mental health issues and how it's possible to carry on even in spite of living with mental illness. He's an all-around inspiring individual with a big mission. So, without further ado, please let me introduce you to Ash Hedli, soon to be known as Ash Sustainable. Welcome, Ash.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on. And I feel interested in what you have to say because if the world continues to go the direction that it's going in, you're probably onto something here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I think I've got like all the samples to see it. And it's annoying. It's like in The Simpsons have predicted so many things. That guy was right about a lot. And I feel like sometimes I hate being right about stuff. So I'm going to have to just act upon it and do what's best. So.
Yeah, actually, I think different people have said about The Simpsons. And isn't South Park also... I don't know if South Park just makes fun of current times, but I'm pretty sure they predict all sorts of things as well, don't they? I didn't watch it as much, but...
The funny thing is that all these ridiculous shows seem to get it right, which is like kind of an indication that we're going in the wrong direction. But Simpsons has been like spot on so much, it's really scary. I'm scared that the dolphins are going to turn against us.
Interesting. Oh yeah, dolphin attacks.
Right.
Yes, I wonder. Okay, so before we kind of get started, I think it would be a good place to have you explain. Let's start with you giving a bit of a background into how you got to where you are today with your mission and your mission. Let's explain both those things.
So let's start with the mission. The first thing first is my mission is like full sustainability, my personal mission. So for my own life, I don't want to be dependent on a system that I don't believe in, a system that has shown that it doesn't really take into account the people that make up the system and keep the system running. So my move is to be completely sustainable, which will allow me to live, I guess, a mentally free life. It will allow me to contribute positively towards the environment. Hopefully, it will allow me to educate others about what it does take, and any movement in that direction is a good movement. I don't expect everyone to jump on board with me planning to get fully sustainable in 5 years, which is the major plan. But I do want people to see that it's possible to get the things you want in life by yourself and with just a piece of space, that land or anything that can be used to grow resources. Mm-hmm. On top of that, I'm from Barbados. I've been living in the US for the last 5 years. I spent 5 years in Thailand studying for university.
What were you studying there?
I studied hospitality. I studied business management with a focus on hospitality, which I've done for my entire life. It's really the only thing you can do in Barbados when you don't have another idea or you don't have a parent with the resources that's going to get you your own business. So everyone kind of goes to hospitality because that's how Barbados makes their money. Mm-hmm. So I did hospitality in Thailand. I worked in France and Paris for a year. I've been to Jamaica, Bahamas. I've been all over the place. Last 5 years, I've been in New York City, working in restaurants and spending 70 hours a week, working very hard to not have much of a life afterward and to live in a box in the sky, as I like to call these apartments that people live in these days. And it's really had a big toll on my mental health. It's really made me see the concentration of how capitalism can be so harmful to people if it's not done correctly. Is what I want. Yeah. So I mostly fear what's happening in the world, given COVID, given like all the things that are coming to light, all the feelings are coming out of so many people, because everyone's kind of getting this feeling that something's not right with how we do things. Mm-hmm. And this is a great time to really see that. And I urge everybody to act upon that. Don't just let it be something that you forget into 2021, mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of a roundabout way of saying I'm going to be sustainable in 5 years' time fully, as much as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. And I want to help others to do the same or to make at least a small move towards that direction. And there's also a bigger concentration on crediting or doing credit to my nation, Barbados, which is very important to me because my family's there, etc.
So how old were you when you left Barbados?
I left Barbados when I was 17. I finished my community college. I was just about to turn 18. I finished community college, did 2 years in hospitality science. And I was just spending my life at the beach. My mother thought I was a wreck, and I was. And she wanted me to go to school. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go. If you want me to go, I'm going to go halfway across the world, because I was a bad kid.
Love it, rebel.
Yeah, right. But,
I'll do it my way, lady.
Right. You're going to worry about me if I'm that far away.
I'll teach you. Tell me what to do with my life.
Right. Yeah. So it turned out great. Thailand was a big learning curve for me, learning a different culture, just so much different things to see and to accept. So that was great. And then I've just been in hospitality my entire time. So
where in Thailand were you going to university?
I went to school at Silpakorn, which is it's originally the University for Artists in Thailand. It was started by an Italian gentleman, and they have a hospitality wing that's paired with a school in France. Mm-hmm. My dad is half French, and I originally wanted to go there, but Thailand just was far enough away from me then. Yeah.
Right. And was that in Bangkok?
In Bangkok, yes.
Okay. Yeah. I was actually just talking about that yesterday, maybe it was, about the first time I guess that was like the first time I had ever really gone traveling. And I remember being so culture shocked when I first, because this would have been, about 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago. So it was the first trip I had ever taken overseas. And I remember getting into Bangkok and being like, I could not believe how many people live in abject poverty. It took me a couple of days just to kind of, I don't think you ever get used to it, but just to adjust, because I went with a tour group and everyone was like going out and getting drunk. And I was just so sensitive. I'm looking around and I saw like little kids sleeping on the street next to dogs. And I was like, I'm going to go write a very emo journal entry back in my hotel room. That must have taken a little bit to adjust when you were living there, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm also bipolar too. So not as severe as bipolar 1, but and I didn't know that when I went to Bangkok, so that made for a lot of interesting realizations of myself, which I kind of did on my own. But it did take a lot of adjusting too. And you mentioned going out and having a good time, which a lot of people go to Thailand to do. But then being had a few drinks late in the night and you're seeing kids begging you to buy flowers or a stray dog, and there's many nights that I've cried in Bangkok while drunk, and then I've gone out the next night again, not thinking about like, what's my place in this? Am I being mindful about it? And that's taken a long time for me to get to that point. But Bangkok's a great example of a place where it's not fair, because that country has every single resource it needs, and they do a good job. Their king and their monarchy up to recently has done a really great job of making the country sustainable, and they've always been Siam or Thailand, and they've been great at that. But still, you see all these people in poverty, but you've been in the streets, people are buying a lot of stuff, there's products, there's food there, there's enough resources for everyone to eat, but you still have poverty. And that just doesn't make sense to me in a common sense way, where if there's enough food for everyone to eat, if there's enough lumber for us to build housing for everyone, then why do we have people on the streets? Because at the very least, we can provide just enough that they can live with dignity, and that's the thing that over years and years you just realize it's all very, very greed oriented and very much control oriented, and it's scary, because where it's taking us is now we're risking people's lives at the cost, because we're actually, politicians are asking themselves, how much is it worth? How much is 100,000 lives worth for us to disrupt our economy, which is based on numbers that we make up and values that we determine as humans, when there's, natural resources.
Well, it's interesting because, to bring it back to COVID, I have quite a few friends in India, and been chatting with some of them about what's been going on. And what was interesting was, because I have one girlfriend, she's actually from Canada also, but she's married to a fellow who's from India. Anyways, and they have a cafe in Goa. And sorry?
Goa is beautiful.
Have you been?
Yeah, my brother and I went in 2008, 2009 New Year's party together.
Oh, fun. I've still yet to have gone to the south, but eventually I will. Anyways, so they have this cafe, and I guess what she was explaining to me was, when COVID, like the quarantine stuff started, there was talk about it. They had told everybody that they were going to do a tester sort of quarantine lockdown that was only going to last like apparently 24 hours or 48 hours or something like that. And then it ended up turning into 4 days. It ended up turning into, several months. Right. But people weren't given enough warning to go out and get enough food. And so you had, I think about how many people in India only make like a few rupees a day. So they wouldn't realistically be able to go out and stockpile food anyhow. Right. So what she said was, luckily they had, because of the cafe, a bunch of food. And I guess they're like somewhere up on the mountainside. And so because the police were just brutally beating people if they were going out into the streets. And so people were sneaking through the jungle and up through the trees to come to the cafe to see if they could, get food from them. And then, anyways, so that was kind of, you think about that. And I'm like, we're living here, we're quite fortunate in the sense that we have a lot more opportunity and resources available to us, but in places like that, they don't. And now I've heard that the government was helping people. And now they've kind of just told everyone, oh, you're on your own. And so I have some other friends that are going around and distributing food, which I collect donations for through my Shantima account. So anyhow, they take food and go and deliver food to people because I guess since COVID has happened, there's been people who are going like days without food and water because they don't have the resources. And I mean, India already had 40% of the population below the poverty line. Yeah. And now add COVID in, and the people that could maybe ride a bicycle rickshaw and make a few dollars.
There's no one there.
Yeah, exactly. And so.
And even if they were there, does the rickshaw man want to take an American on his rickshaw right now? Because what's the chances of an American having COVID currently, given how things are going?
Yeah, maybe. So hard. Geez, times are so crazy. But you are onto something with the sustainable sort of plan of action over the next few years, because you really don't know what's going to happen. And it's so silly to me that it's taken us to a boiling point like this to realize, oh, wait, maybe we shouldn't put all of our faith and trust into one, one.
That's true.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. We've made the system overly efficient, and we're doing that in terms of like globalization. And I love we have to connect as a whole world, but do we really need special figs from Madagascar here? We have enough technology to do everything. The real reason why, my wife and I might have arguments about political situations, things like that. And I've realized recently the reason why we disagree is because she's from here in the US. Mm-hmm. I'm from Barbados. So Barbados being such a small place, it's 260,000 people. Those are nationals. At any given point on the island, it's just under 1 million people on the island, mm-hmm. including tourists, expats. So you've got a very small sample society. When you grow up in a place like that, you know your politicians, you know what's going on, because I'll tell you, when I was younger, I smoked cigarettes. My grandmother knew that I smoked a cigarette before I even got home from the place where I smoked the cigarette, because a friend of hers called her to let her know. So you really get to know. I know, I deserved it. But she basically, you just know everything in the Caribbean. You know what in the island. You know what's happening. So it really allows you to see how capitalism works and things like that. And in our situation, we're like India. We're a product of colonization. Our population is majority 90% African, 8% white, and then there's a small mixture. Most of us are all mixed. So we are a product of that. Then England had us under control. And then eventually it was like, oh, you know what? There's a better way of doing this system where we take their sugar. And the better way is that we now go back home, we leave them behind, leave the responsibility behind, and let them deal for themselves. And in that we'll also sell them our food products, and they will become customers rather than a territory that we're responsible for. So we gave up independence. We got independence, as they would call it. And now we're stuck in a situation where the only thing that's worth getting money from the colonizers is to offer them our beaches, offer them our hotels, offer them our service. And that's it. And that's the industry I've worked in my whole life. And I love it. And I love meeting people. I love traveling. I loved everything about that. But when I think about what happened during COVID and the fears I had for my family, my grandmother's still in Barbados. I have sisters, I have a brother there, and all of them have young children that I obviously care about a lot. When COVID first hit in Barbados, they shut down the supermarkets with no notice. And the fear is that we have moved so far away from agriculture and growing our own food in Barbados because we depend on the money from the US, from Canada, from England to then fund us buying the food and the products that those people, those demographics want to buy when they come to us. So no one's farming any land. So in a situation like COVID where our tourism is going to dry up, we're not going to have food ready to feed everyone. And then what's that equal? That equals total chaos. So in this whole situation, it's like, I know there's problems all over the world, but who's going to be in the worst situation? And it's the people who have been taught by the global economy and by the capitalist way of thinking, where you just want more and more and more. It's the countries that depend on bigger countries to take care of them. Because when the bigger countries end up in big trouble, are they still going to help us? Are they still going to send us food? No. Right now in the US, just months ago, the food supply was messed up and they were destroying acres of eggplants. So you think if it costs them less to destroy food before they send it to someone, are they really still going to send food to these countries that they used to be part of and now they don't have any responsibility to?
Well, if you look at, and if you look at it on like a big scale, I don't know if you went into grocery stores during COVID. When it first happened, I remember going to the supermarket and I was trying to find some food. And there was literally no food. Like all of the things that I was like, okay, what can I buy that will multiply? So flour, rice, lentils, beans, all of that was gone. Sugar, like everything was gone. And I'm looking around. I was just shocked. I was like just totally shocked walking around and thinking, you know, we all like to think that we're giving and generous and we care about one another and, you know, shame those who don't. But you really saw the every man for himself survival mechanism that kicks in. And I think on a big scale, because that's on the individual, but if you look at that on a bigger scale, if these big countries, like westernized first world countries, are in trouble, they're going to be like, you know, every country for himself, basically, exactly. Right? And so what you're saying makes sense. And that's definitely something that should be talked about, because these people in, you know, think about the people in like the South Pacific Islands and India, Thailand, Asia, like even though there's those resources that could be cultivated there, if people don't know how to do that anymore because it's been so many generations of being reliant on, like you said, imports, essentially, we're just setting ourselves up for like massive disaster.
Definitely. And, you know, it was funny you mentioned about buying things that multiply. You mentioned when you were going shopping. And that's exactly the thought I had. And that's why I was like, oh, get some seeds. Those multiply into plants and we can grow these things. Like anything that I need, I can find a way to grow something that can get me to, at least, it may not be the best. It's not going to be like my Irish spring soap that I love the smell of so much, but it might be, I'll still be clean, you know? But, you know, and the travel, the movement of having to like have all your meat produced in one place, you're so disconnected from it. People don't think about what that disconnection does. Like, you know, there's people who, so I'm a chef by trade. I mean, I've trained as a chef in my hospitality years, and I love food and I love to cook my own food, but the disconnect from people seeing their food being slaughtered, and this is really strange, is you don't realize what it takes to get that piece of food. And then you become very accustomed to just having and wanting more and more and more. But then you go and I'm not trying to shame anybody, because I mean, everyone I think is guilty of this, and I still am. We want to seem like we're good, but I don't know how prepared everyone is to make the effort to at least make the steps towards doing that at the cost of their own convenience in these days, you know? I think the younger generation are starting to realize it, and I think that's uplifting, because it's not going to be easy for people that grew up in a time where we had the internet all the time. You know, we had all these things that were so, you know, you Grubhub, you just push a button and food's showing up. But then think about all the plastic that goes behind that. Think about, you know, is it fair how much this delivery guy is making? You know, there's a better way for us to do this. And in a case where there's an emergency, there should be a farm and a livestock breeder and a chicken farm and a dairy within a certain amount of square miles at all times for each society, because at the worst case, if we have to lock down and socially distance, and if we use COVID as the example, we should be able to know that, okay, at least we know John down the street has chickens, and we know that Sarah's growing broccoli, and we know that Joseph has some cows, and we know that Johnny is an electrician, he knows how to do that stuff, and we know that Samuel is a plumber, and Jane has a apples or whatever. So that's kind of the thing, because the less you want products to move, the more sustainable they are, because you're not releasing emissions, and you're not, as a chef, you're not putting the quality of your food at stake, because eating the lettuce from the garden that I grow versus the lettuce that I buy in the stores is a huge difference. And so as well, this is a big part of it.
Yeah, the difference in organic, fresh food, the taste and the smell is huge. Like if you smell a free range organic chicken egg versus the sick, pale, yellow, it literally smells like ass. It's like, it doesn't smell good. Same thing with grass-fed beef, organic beef. It smells so different than if you cook like that stinky, like you're eating sick meat, you're eating sick animals anyways. Yeah. Like I'm not vegetarian. I eat a lot of vegetarian, but if I'm going to eat meat, I'll eat grass-fed, organic, or deer meat. Yeah, deer meat, venison. Like my partner now, he's taken up archery, which is his plan to start bow hunting in the fall. Right. So, we also don't need to eat as much meat either, is another thing. People eat so much, and you could probably eat meat a couple times a week and be fine.
Again, as a chef, like meat was my thing, and I used to hate when people said, "Oh, you gotta eat less meat." And people were telling me about the factory farming. I mean, I came from a small place. I didn't really think much of it, but when you see it more and more, it's so true. We don't need that much meat, first of all. Secondly, we don't need people becoming hypocritical because they're removed from the whole meat eating thing, or the meat slaughtering part of it. So they just eat as they feel. I took a trip in Bangkok, outside of Bangkok, with some friends one time, and we called it the meet and eat your own food tour. Basically, we went to a friend's farm, and there was nothing that weekend that we ate that we didn't have to be there present or be a part of the slaughtering of it. And it seems horrible, but we are meat eaters as humans, but we don't need to have 10 different chickens in one package in the supermarket, where they, it's crazy. We should be able to be accountable for what we're doing in terms of that. I get a lot of vegans that think that I'm a vegan because of the things I've been saying recently.
Vegans always assume everyone else is a vegan anyways.
Right, yeah. And to justify it, I want to put this out there because it's so true, and that we should be vegans. But no, we are human. We're made to eat a mixture of meat and greens. We don't need as much. But there's a Buddhist story where two monks are walking through the jungle, and they came across a sick female tiger that just had a bunch of cubs. And one of the monks decides that in order to give her nourishment so she can feed her cubs, there's a bigger life cost if she dies and she can't feed her cubs than if he feeds himself to the tiger. And he feeds himself to the tiger so the mother tiger will have enough energy to survive and take care of her children. And the reason why the justification in Buddhism is that you then get good karma from that action. So like the animals that we eat and that we sacrifice, or that they sacrifice their lives for our nourishment, then in turn will get a better life. But obviously not everyone's going to believe that. But I just know that I like meat. I'm going to keep eating meat, but my goal is by the time I get to 2025, when I am fully sustainable, I will not eat meat that I haven't myself done the deed of taking its life, because at that point it becomes more worth it and there's a bigger connection.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. There is a huge disconnect between people and what is on their plate, and also just a lack of appreciation too. Like, that animal lost its life so that you can eat. Oh my gosh. Like, sorry, I was just having a flashback from like a couple weeks ago. There was some geese crossing the road. This is just to give you an example of human ignorance and the disconnect between human life and not having respect for like the animal's life. Just there were some geese, they were crossing the road, and the baby geese, that little, what are they called? Ducklings? I don't know. What are baby geese?
No.
Gooselings?
No
Geeslings? I should know this.
I like geeslings.
I'm a bad Canadian. I don't know.
You can edit this out if you have to.
No. I like everybody to know that I can be an absolute idiot sometimes. Anyways, so they're crossing the road, and the little baby geese were stuck behind a fence. They couldn't figure out that they had to go around this bush to get around. So all this traffic had stopped, and I could see that the rest of the geese didn't want to leave, so they were waiting and completely blocked the middle of the road because they didn't want to leave their babies behind.
Right.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I got to go help them. So I got out and I carefully walked, did a big circle, and then came around behind them and was just trying to like corral them around. And I got one around, and then there was still two left. And there was another lady that had come around, and she was trying to help me. So finally, these little babies got out from behind the fence, and they all started to cross the road. And this asshole in this giant RV who had been sitting there starts barreling towards them like they're crossing the road. It was just going to run them over. And me and this woman were like, I was just like, what is happening? This woman starts screaming at him, stop. That's illegal in Canada. You can't run over geese. And he stops his RV while the geese start to cross the road. And he's like, they're just animals, you know? And I was like, oh, well, so are you, asshole.
Right. Yeah,
I didn't even like, I was just like, you're an animal.
Right.
Like, you're absolutely an animal right now if you think it's okay. Like, so this disconnect of, oh, they're just animals. And that, you know, kind of applies to this disconnect that people have when it comes to animals and their food and just the way that you treat them. So like, I'm not somebody who's like, oh, you have to be a meat eater, you have to be a vegan. Depending on your body, depending on your constitution, people need more or less of something else. I do believe our diets need to vary. But when you're putting something in your body, it's not just, you know, ethical to make sure that that animal had a healthy, good life and a humane, you know, slaughter.
Right.
But like respecting the fact that this life is now nourishing you. I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm not even sure if I connected my points. I see
exactly what you're saying.
I rant sometimes.
I like ranting too. This is a great, you know, boom.
Then I forget what I was talking about, and I'm just ranting.
Yeah. The amount of times I go into rooms and I don't even know why I'm there, or in the middle of conversations, and I'm like, wait a second, I gotta catch this back. Anyway.
Yeah, you're like, wait, I gotta circle this back to my point because now I'm just saying a lot of things.
The disconnect is real. It's like you said, there's people who just are sometimes like, oh, you should be doing more of this or more of that, and then but then they're being hypocritical. They're doing all the things that they're crying other people down for not doing in an inadvertent way. And I'm not mad at them because, again, I've been there and I was that not too long ago, but it's the disconnect. Now, when you get to someone like the guy who was driving the RV and he's like, they're just animals. Like, okay, yeah, we live on this planet. We're human beings. We are literally the most intelligent, or one of the most intelligent creatures on this planet. Does that mean we have to be disrespectful or just like kind of
Barbaric.
Barbarically assault the planet that we're on. Like, we should be thinking with a much longer term goal. And I think that a lot of societies in this new age, because of capitalism, because we've got so accustomed to like, oh, we need a pool, oh, we need this, we need that. You don't need any of it. There's another way to go about it. And we think we're chasing happiness, but there's a lot of miserable people with pools that I know. And I've seen people be very happy with just having the rain fall one day and being able to jump into a puddle. So it really makes you think about, we're just consuming in the hope that this consumption is going to cure something inside of us, when really and truly what we really need to be curing is our relationship with the world and our relationship with nature, and really seeing things for what they actually are. Because eating a bunch of chicken and then going to a protest about factory farming doesn't make any sense to me, and again, I never try to come down on anyone, but I don't like hearing from people who are saying what people should be doing, but we're not actually acting on it. So I think it's important for people to act on it and people to let other people know that this is how you would go about it, and just to be honest about it. And you're gonna get to bumps in the road when you try to do things right, and you're still gonna do a lot of horrible things as a human being, because that's just our nature. But if we're not trying to think about it, if we're not trying to be mindful about it, then we just accelerate the destruction of the planet, destruction of our security in terms of food, in terms of like wealth as it's seen today. And we just leave ourselves completely vulnerable when it just makes more sense to kind of like reel things back. I talk a lot about the economy and how it's changed. So like when you've got the baby boomer generation, and they're not called baby boomers for no reason. During that time, so many industries were born, which meant so many more jobs were around, which meant that so many more people were getting money. It just made sense. There was a whole lot of things growing, a whole lot of technology blowing up. Then we got to a point where Generation X kind of like then started to lose jobs to machines, lose jobs to technology, which was the natural progression of things. We've made more tools. These tools can do what humans do. So now we don't have much of a reason for humans. But with that switch, we have to really change how we do things, because, again, people will end up getting left behind. The wealth gap across the world is ridiculous. There's people who own so much that they don't need, they could never use all of it, but their families will be fine for the rest of their life. But the more and more things move towards technology, the more and more people become vulnerable, because there won't be jobs for them. And can we really count on those in power, those that control the money, that control the entire world, really? Can we count on them to be the ones that are going to say, okay, no, you know what, everyone should have their dignity and have a place to live, or everyone should be able to grow their own food and have a lot of land to do so? I don't believe that the way certain places are acting and certain politicians are acting and certain rhetoric is going, I can't put my faith in them to do so for myself, or even as a person that lives in one of these countries. And I can't put my faith in these countries to do what's best for my my home country or the countries that I've lived in throughout my life. So it's really important that we address this and that we don't settle for going back to the new norm. We need to go back to the new different, if you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And actually, there's two things that I thought of when you were saying that. And that is, there are people around the world who have been trying to hold on to their traditions and hold on to the more simple way of life. You see it a lot in like the Amazon in South America, like, them, or in Papua New Guinea, where they're like constantly fighting off like the oil and gas companies, and like these poor people like have been, so many of them have been like assassinated and just disappear. And then they take the land because these people are, they want this, they need this land to farm and to feed their people. And the gas companies will come along, offer them money. And if they say no, next thing you know, these people are disappearing, they're being murdered. And, the same thing. And obviously, I mean, I think that's probably, if we go back, that's what colonization kind of has been.
Yeah.
But then the other thing, actually, there was three things. One of them was when you said Generation X, I was thinking of the Spice Girls song, Generation X, Generation
I'm
X.
a huge Spice Girl fan. I have multiple of the same CDs. Every one of my sisters and cousins had one. Yes, Spice Girls all day.
Sorry, I just had to say that because you were saying that, and then all of a sudden the song started to go through my head, and I was like, oh no, damn you, Spice Girls. But that brings me to my next point: early brainwashing, which was the third thing. So, what happens when? Because where is this disconnect coming from? Why do people not care? Because human beings are meant to feel. We're meant to feel pain when we see others suffering. And that's, unless you're a sociopath, that is normal. So we have all of these luxuries. We have all of this technology, but it's a brainwashing program, because if you're so busy trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to attain all of these things that basically, since as soon as you could start watching TV, you keep getting told, buy this, buy that. It'll make you more beautiful. It'll make you more popular. It'll make you more confident. Attain these things. And it is modern day slavery. People think that they're free. People think that they are free. No, you're not. You are following a program, a narrative that you have been brainwashed into following. And so instead of thinking about making this planet a better place for all of us to live in, you're not thinking about that, because you're stuck in this cycle of get, gimme.
It's a rebranding of oppression. And that's what's happened over time. And as you said, it's modern day slavery. My wife and I have had multiple heated arguments about the use of, because I always say that same thing you just said. I always say it's modern day slavery. And she's a bit more sensitive, but she doesn't like the use of that word, because she thinks it cheapens the actual more harsh form of oppression, which was slavery. But I think it's important to say it like that, because people need to understand that we are still being oppressed, and we still are in a position where we are being, as you said, brainwashed into learning these systems, and then we're being taught by generations that were first taught these ways that they want us to do. And there's a cappella song, if you look it up, with Damian Marley, Bob Marley's son, also known as Junior Gong.
I saw him live once.
Oh, nice. Awesome. They do a lot of reggae concerts in Canada. I know that. We have a very big Caribbean community in Canada. So I'm sure you know your reggae back to front.
A little bit.
Yeah. He has a very short a cappella video that he does on YouTube where he says, it's sad to see the old slave mill is grinding slow, but grinding still. Slavery is still going. They just rebranded it so that you feel free, but the only freedom they want you to have is to be able to purchase products and keep this economy going. Because in this new capitalist world where they can no longer have slaves, they now are like, okay, how do we turn this poor people into slaves by offering them little pieces of shiny gold to just keep making this thing work, when the people that are making it work are getting the vast majority of all that shiny rock, and then everyone else is getting just enough to live on. And then we still, on top of that, have problems where people are hungry, people are not having a place to live. And that's like, if there's enough money for someone to have, for 5% of people not to have 90% of it, then this needs to get redistributed. And it's not even that I want to take money away from people who've been successful in capitalism, because I do respect that, and it takes a lot to start a business, and on one side of it, you are providing jobs for people and stuff like that. But my bigger issue is the entire system doesn't work for the majority, and with the way technology is going, it needs to change. And one other thing that you mentioned with the brainwashing, the hardest generation for me to talk to about becoming sustainable, when it just makes so much common sense. It makes just, there's no argument against it. As long as you're willing to put the work into it, you can produce enough food for yourself with a small amount of space, especially with technology. But the people that are hardest to get to understand how beneficial it is, or the fact that it needs to happen, are the people from their, 50 up until 70, that baby boomer kind of area there, where they still were like, oh, they came from a hard time, things were tough, but then they got all this technology and then things got easy. No one's going to want to go back to easy when you've had it tough. But I think the good thing about the future is that the younger people see that easy is not always right. We have to make sure it's more about, less about posting and just talking about it. And we got to make sure that we start making the moves to actually live it and do it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can run a very successful business and create job opportunities and promote and strive towards equality with integrity and with value, or with a value system. Yeah, and like, this is the thing. I would have to say that, if we are brainwashed and enslaved by the need to attain material things, that is a form of modern day slavery. And, if we're going to talk about, modern day slavery, there literally is modern day slavery.
Right. That's the next thing.
Let's look at where our clothes are being made. Let's look at where our technology is being made. Okay. We have children in places in Africa who are literally enslaved, who are mining the materials we need to go into our technology. Then let's go and look at chocolate. Where do you think our Nestle, Hershey's, our cheap chocolate is coming from? It's coming from the Ivory Coast, where people, child poachers, go. They steal children from Mali, the surrounding country, convince the kids that they're going to give them job opportunities so that they can then, help support their family. The kids drop out of school. They take them to the Ivory Coast. They enslave them at the factories. And these kids are literally modern day slaves. And then we're buying our chocolate bars over here. And so people need to, if you're going to talk about slavery, yes, it existed in the past and it's a very real thing, but it's also currently happening. And don't even get me started about human trafficking and the things that are happening in Canada, the US, to human beings all over the world. So it's a very big conversation, but slavery still exists. And if people don't think that our countries are still run on it, they're wrong, because it is. It's still run on slavery.
Yeah, and then it comes down to as well fair, because a lot of the news is about making people fearful, and especially here in the US, they're still murdering Black people. They've been doing this for years and years, and it's still happening. If the institutional racism still exists across the world, then I'm sure the people that made the system that we live by now had slavery, or the idea that gets you to the point where you think it's okay to enslave somebody. Someone had that idea before, so why wouldn't they have that idea to rebrand it? If you're in a business, sometimes you need to rebrand stuff. So they rebranded it, making us feel free, but we are still definitely not living the life that we should. As a community that's come this far and seen as much as we have, we need to be making, and have as much technology as we do. We can definitely rip it all down and start it back again. So,
good for you for promoting this and starting to advocate for the change, because like you said, it's very difficult for people to want to change when it's not directly affecting them.
Yes.
But that's the huge mistake and the foolish way of thinking, because you might not think it is directly affecting you until you realize it's directly affecting you and you have no food. So, so are you going to get armed to the tits or what, so that you can protect your food?
Well,
Because over here in Canada, our gun laws are pretty strict. I like the idea of like, you know, being able to carry a handgun in your purse or something like that in the States.
right.
Because that's a real threat.
I think the problem with guns is in America is that everyone has one, and then that makes you scared because when you think about chaos, if everyone has a gun and there's chaos happening, chances are you might probably want to have a gun because you don't know what's going to happen. But I think that the gun laws in the U.S. are kind of ridiculous, and that no one needs an assault rifle. No one needs. If there was no guns, we wouldn't need guns. But now there's guns, so we need guns.
Gotcha.
In Barbados, it's very much. In Barbados, they have a decent system, I guess, where unless you're working in a business or you own a business that is very like cash driven, or you expect to have a certain amount of cash on you, then you can apply for a license. And there's a very, very there's a way about going about. There's a way to go around it and get it legally, and they make sure and they vet who you are, and you know that works out well. In the US, you've got people 18-year-olds buying assault rifles, and that's the thing. So I mean, I have felt in my fare in recent times that maybe we should get a gun, but my wife is not into it, and I really deep down don't really think I would need it. I'd probably go the route of your husband and get a bow and arrow and shoot my animals that way if I had to. But I do understand that because there's so much guns around, there's a fear that you need a gun to protect yourself, because if you have a bunch of food in a place like this and then the food supply shuts down, people are going to show up with guns.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's when you bust out your assault rifle and you're like, "Get off my land! There's my land."
But I'll be the guy out there with a bouquet of broccoli trying to beat back the guy with a gun. Probably, unfortunately, so
you could get a potato gun.
There we go. Now we're talking. See, this is the sort of ideas I like to have, because a potato gun, non-lethal, but I know a hot potato is not going to feel great. So yes, actually, I'm going to actually do a video of that once I have more crops and once I have a livestock set up. I'm going to build a potato gun, and I'm going to call it Shanti.
There you go. But you have to say, "Get off my land."
I'll put on my best American accent, and I will definitely say it like that for you. I'll do that at the intro for you.
Yes.
This whole thing was worth it.
But I do agree with you with the gun license thing. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, here in Canada, you do have to have you have to go through a protocol. You have to apply for your firearms license. There's a training program you have to go through before you can actually legally carry a gun. And then your gun has to be under lock and key at all times, basically.
Makes
and there's
sense.
only certain places that you're able to go and shoot it. So yeah, that just makes sense. But okay, so I wanted to ask you about microgreens and how great they are.
Okay. So my main thing, because obviously I realized that the journey to sustainability and trying to withdraw myself from the capitalist economy is not just going to be simple. Like I just wake up tomorrow and say, okay, I'm not spending money and I'm just going to have everything I need because, the world isn't built that way. So microgreens, someone working in restaurants, I've done a lot of research. We use them in a lot of the dishes of the restaurants I've worked at, and they are fantastic. Just because they're coming from the seed. So within a seed, you have all of the nutrients that plant is going to have, basically. So when you have a seed burst and it becomes a seedling, the majority of all the nutrients that plant will give you are in that one small piece of seedling. So it doesn't get spread out across the whole plant. So
are we talking about sprouts?
We're talking about the next level up from sprouts. So So you have got sprouts, you've got microgreens, and then you've got baby, like your baby arugula, baby spinach, which is the next level. And then you've got your regular spinach. So it's just different stages of the growing. So microgreens are great because they have fantastic flavor, more so than sprouts. Sprouts are a bit more watery, but like for example, wild arugula microgreens have a very spicy taste. Mm-hmm. Or if you have mustard microgreens, you get like these tastes of wasabi. So like if you throw it in with some regular lettuce, it really gives you these intense flavors. It gives you intense nutrients, and it can be grown vertically. So you see behind me, I have my shelf here. This is my first grow rack. I'm growing microgreens because obviously I'm in a place now where there's winter. Syracuse has the most snow in all of New York. So microgreens is a really good way for people who don't have much space. For example, people who live in big metropolitan areas like New York City, Chicago. You don't have the space. So people look at me and they're like, oh, yeah, you can be sustainable because you have a little space outside. But no, I can grow microgreens inside of my own home. And that's a good way to start, having that food supply there. I just also know that it's a good business for me to get into to kind of fund my plan, because I have enough contacts in the restaurant industry in New York that I can get them sold, because I think one or two of the chefs I've worked with still like me. So that's just what that's about. I think it's very smart to go vertical, go hydroponic when you're growing where possible, where you have the money to do so. I still think it's great to grow regular vegetables outside, but microgreens is just a really secure way to grow year round, and you harvest it within 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, you have a product. So I've got these here. They're on blackout right now because you kind of let light in the beginning to make them stronger. But in 2 weeks' time, I would have maybe 2 pounds of microgreens that I have at my disposal to either sell. And the thing about it, if it's a very efficient business model, because whatever I don't sell, because I'm trying to reduce how much I'm buying, I'll just eat and I'll figure it out. And that'll be like, okay, there's no loss there,
So what are some good plants for growing as microgreens?
The favorite in terms of like flavor, texture, and everything is definitely the sunflower seed, and as well as pea shoots. Those ones you can just eat those by themselves. The flavor is intense. The sunflower one tastes like sunflower seeds, but in a crunchy green way. It's amazing. I had my first one and I haven't stopped since then. I've just been waiting to get my seeds planted because I really want to just eat it all the time. They're fantastic. But then you get things like radishes. Radishes are not really the most flavorful thing. They have a good taste to it, but it's not like a wow that you get from the sunflower. But the colors to it, you get this purple and this green, and it's just so very delicate that chefs love to use it. So that's a good one to grow as a money crop, because you can get chefs buying it to decorate their plates and do all those things. Then you've got kale, cilantro is amazing. The arugula has such a nice spicy flavor. Everything you can be surprised by the different things that you grow, even things that are not generally edible, like amaranth. It's got a very beautiful red and white color. And yeah, but if you want to start growing microgreens, I suggest, like, if you just want to have a very small little thing in your home, start with the sunflower and pea shoots, because those ones, they won't disappoint you. The kids will like it. I have my nephew. He loves it. He hates eating anything green, but he'll eat sunflower microgreens all day long.
Oh, so, interesting.
Yeah. He also likes the lettuce that's grown fresh rather than lettuce from the store. Which is,
yeah.
Which is weird for a kid.
Yeah, exactly. And like the difference is, if you taste like a carrot that's organic, homegrown, it tastes so different. And then you get the ones from the store and they're gross. Like I don't like the store carrots. Yeah, I know. I feel that. Okay. Yeah. I wonder if I should, I have my Happy Light. I wonder if I'll show you.
Yeah, that's it.
My Happy Light.
Oh, the sad lamp. Yeah.
I'm sad. No, my girlfriend gave it to me. She's gonna love. Yeah, she's gonna love that I'm talking about her again. She loves when I talk about her on my podcast. So funny. Hey, Dano.
Love it, Dano.
Yeah, she gave me this Happy Light because she doesn't use it or whatever. So I've been using it every day. I wonder if I could I grow stuff with that?
You're so funny that you mentioned that, because I actually had that thought. My wife bought me a seasonal affective disorder lamp. It's a sad lamp. Because when I first, in Barbados where I grew up, and even in Thailand, you get daylight from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. every single day. It's like 12 hours light, 12 hours dark. In New York, when the winter comes around, you get like 4 hours, 5 hours of nice sunlight a day. And I used to get depressed. I still do when winter comes around. I'm a shell of myself, but the lamp really helps to make you feel like, a little bit like you're outside. I don't know if you can grow with it or not, but I was thinking about it, and I feel like we are plants too, so we need sunlight. And I feel like that's what the sad lamp is. It's just our own grow light, kind of.
Wonder if I could like make my hair grow or something like that. So
I have the fertilizer for you if you want.
For my hair. Actually, I'm curious. When you were in Barbados, did you experience as many lows? Because you were saying that you're bipolar 2.
That's right.
Yeah. Did you notice that you had that when you were there, or was it when you started getting into like other climates when there was like a change of weather?
I think other people noticed it more when I was younger because I was just having a good time or not having a good time. But I don't think it was apparent to me that there was something that was up until I left. I was on my own, and there's always been ups and downs. As I was younger, I didn't know what to attribute it to. So there's always a feeling for young people with mental illnesses. It can be difficult to bring the subject up, or you might say to a young child might say to their parent, like, "Oh, I don't feel good," and the parent doesn't know what do they mean by that.
Like, you couldn't put words to it, to your feelings.
Because it's a thing that people don't talk about enough. So kids don't know how to talk about it, and sometimes the parents might be also have like issues like that, but they also don't know how to talk about it. So I think there was a lot of feelings like that when I was younger, where it's kind of like something is up, but you don't know what it is, and then that kind of creates an insecurity, kind of creates a whole lot of different things. But thankfully, I went to Thailand and I had an absolutely wild, life-changing experience where I went all the way down, all the way back up, and all the way back down again to kind of like realize that, mental health is really important and you really need to pay attention to it. You need to talk to people about it and look out and seek out younger people, especially who may be going through this, and let them know that there are people who go through this and it's not easy, but there's ways to cope with it, and there's ways to work on yourself and to recognize when things are happening inside of you. And I think that's really important because I've always wished that there was a bit more of a conversation around it, rather than what are you talking about? You just need to go take a run or something like that. When the depression levels of someone who has manic depression or just straight up depression can be so low that it's not just as simple as just like get out of bed, because you don't have the energy to just do that. So I think it's important for us older people with these types of illnesses, especially if we are able to recognize it to a certain extent, to talk to younger people and let them know that, some days I wake up and I don't want to get out of bed because, I suffer from the same thing as you. And it's not about finding a solution. It's just about knowing that you're not alone and that there's other people that go through this. And just that is enough. You don't want to have a 1-hour conversation with a therapist or someone telling you what you should do to be happier when you're depressed. You just kind of want to know, I've got my friend Jack, and Jack understands how I feel. And, so that's the part of mental illness that I try to touch on as much as possible and be open about it as much as I can, much to the horror of my family members, by giving stories and things like that, which are definitely like things I wouldn't want to just like say out to anybody. But I definitely talk to someone who's going through what I've gone through and what I know I could go through, very frankly, and tell them, it seems crazy to a lot of people what you're doing, but it seems pretty normal to me, and this is how you can deal with it and navigate that.
Yeah, and I think that people get uncomfortable talking about illness that you can't see.
Yes.
And especially when it comes to mental illness, people really, I think, are starting to talk about it more now, but you look at our parents' generation, you don't talk about your feelings. So when you start to experience like, something's wrong, like, being able to articulate how you're feeling, or even to just be heard or understood, would make a huge difference. What is the difference between bipolar 1 and 2? I don't know.
So bipolar 1 is kind of like what you typically see when people represent bipolar in movies. What was the name of that movie? There's a movie with Richard Gere. In any case, bipolar 1 is so manic depression, bipolar means that you go from states of mania to depression. So you either have a bunch of energy and you're doing things that are like not sleeping for 3 days and you're just like focused on a project and you're doing that. And then after that, you go through a period where you're completely depressed. You can't move. You get thoughts that you don't want to think about or talk about. And you're kind of crippled by it. You can't get to work. Like you're paralyzed basically. Bipolar 1, you have much more stronger bouts of mania. So you get people who feel like they are being talked to by God, and you more brink on the level of like slight psychosis. So you have much more energy. You're doing much more, and you're just like very much focused on just like believing that you are invincible, and that's kind of the feeling you get when you are manic. So bipolar 1 people spend more time on that level, and it goes much further. So they might be up on a building, walking on the ledge, thinking that nothing could ever happen to them, and that makes people fearful. Or you could like have an angry episode, and your reaction does not line up with whatever's happened. Bipolar 2 is a lot more mild, and the swings are much more day to day. So you don't get as much and as bad of a mania going on. You do have bad depression. I think there's a big spectrum, so everyone has it differently. For me, I go through maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. It could be feeling like not so great, and then 2 weeks I feel like, oh yeah, I'm on top of the world. And it switches, and it's not based on anything. It's not based on me consuming certain things or anything like that. It's based purely on this is how my body works. My brain has something happening, and so yeah, bipolar 2 is much more manageable, I would say, because I have a lot of friends that have bipolar 1, and it's hard to stop someone who is manic on bipolar 1. I think bipolar 2, you just you spend more time depressed. You spend more time depressed, and you spend much more rapidly changing moods rather than going completely off the rails on one thing. Right. With bipolar 1, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even know that there was more than one kind, but that makes sense. And everybody's experience is going to be a little different, obviously, of course, as well. But yeah, it's definitely an important one to talk about, because I think many people are, even just depression. So many people suffer from depression and, or like mental health issues of some kind. And yeah, and I think there's a lot of shame, which is fascinating because there's very few people, at least in like, I would say, if you look at America, if you look at Canada, there's very few people who aren't at some point in their life affected by mental health, either, a few times in their life or chronically.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely a big one. And it's tough too, because it's something you can't see. I remember several years ago, I was totally taken aback. I had a friend. She was like always a very happy person. She always seemed very like, I would never have thought that there was anything wrong. And she, I found out that she, I'd like seen her like the week before. We had made all these plans. We were going to do some travel together. And she jumped off the Lionsgate Bridge in Vancouver. Yeah. And I was just like, this was 10 years ago now. And I was just like, whoa, like, holy, like I would never have expected that, because it's something you can't see. So there's a lot of like, and often the people who seem the happiest are masking some of the like most intense pain. And sometimes you just need to put a voice to it to sort of take the power away from the dark shadows that can come in and really start to make you believe those dark thoughts, like, so if you can talk about them, they're not as powerful. They're not as strong. That's what I would think.
Yeah, no, it gives you a control over it that you need to have. Because if you can't, again, mindfulness is the key. If you can't be mindful of your own state, your own motivations for doing things. Someone with bipolar who has done many things without thinking about it, just based on like a hedonistic mania. It's being mindful about, wait, why am I about to do this? And that the power in speaking about it and making it a separate object from you as a person and not mushing it together is the powerful thing, because then you can take control of it. And like you said, there's shame involved in it. So people don't want to talk about it because they can't. And then that's where the loneliness comes. That's where you play it off and seem very happy. And then no one ever knows. And like you said, so many people do these things and people always say, oh, I would have never thought that this would have happened, or I never, and I've had friends recently that have gone that route, and many people wouldn't have thought that would happen. But that's why it's important that we make it so that people can talk about it, so that people have someone that they can reach out to. And I invite anybody who is feeling a certain type of way. I'm happy to talk to anyone and explain like what I've been through in terms of that, and just be there as someone to listen, or whatever. I think it's important that we have a platform for people to talk about it, and that is not something that we sweep under the rug, because we'll lose too many great people that way.
Yeah, because when and this is kind of something that I often come back to, is the people who have suffered the most, who have been to the very darkest depths of themselves many times. Those are usually the people that have the greatest compassion and gifts to offer the world. And and also just being able to talk with other people and say, you're not alone. Like, being relatable and being like, you're not alone. Like, I think when people feel alone, that's when it feels very, very isolating. And, depending on your background and your freedom to talk about your feelings or whatever, especially for men, unfortunately, so many times you hear, be a man up, boys don't cry. And, obviously the male and female brain do work differently. There's different areas that are larger in one area and work more so than the other. But I mean, when it comes down to it, we're all human beings and we all feel, and we need to be able to, no matter what your gender is talk about how you're feeling, because the human experience sucks sometimes. Like I keep coming back to this, like nobody goes unscathed through this life. Everyone suffers in some way or another. And you are, sorely mistaken if you think that, oh, that person has it so good that people might look at my account and see what I'm putting out there and be like, oh yeah, and it's like, no, I know these things because I've had to learn it the hard way, because I've suffered. I've suffered a lot. I still suffer. Everybody does. And I think that when you can kind of start to talk about this stuff and you realize, okay, although this might sometimes feel like my greatest curse and has been one of the most challenging things that I've had to go through, the kind of depth and lessons that you gain from it, if you're looking to learn and grow, you have so much you can share with other people and help show them the light and show them the way through. So that's super awesome that you talk about it openly, because it's an important one.
Thank you. I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
Completely lost it. I told you, I have space.
Oh, that's okay. I do the same thing.
Yeah, I completely love. I just had like I probably had like the biggest epiphany in my head just now, and it probably was like it was probably the cure to COVID-19, and I just slipped my mind. So who knows?
You'll think of it after when we end the call, and you'll be like, I know what it was. Well, yeah, I definitely would say that aside from promoting people moving toward sustainability, I would say that I hope to see you promoting some more of that, or you just giving the space, or being able to. I think there's an important message with this kind of stuff is, if I can do it, you can do it. Like, I can live like this, and I can suffer, and I can struggle, but I can also still, in my good moments, accomplish all of this, and so can you.
Right.
The encouragement.
I can still twerk on my cooking videos and have a good time when I'm still like working hard and stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. And what I did want to say is like when you mentioned people saying, "Oh, you probably have it so great," and you can talk about these things in other ways. I want to put blessings on those people, because they probably want to have a voice, but they don't have it, or they are fear. And that's a real thing, because I've feared it before too. But we have to speak. And if we don't speak, and if we don't say it, and we don't bring these things up, then nothing gets solved, because we just all curl in. And at the end of the day, you're always going to get people that are not going to see things the way you see it. And they may not be as considerate, that people have different feelings, and that's okay. But when you're doing the right thing, or trying to at least move in the right direction, and like be compassionate to other people, the rewards that you get are so much more than the backlash or the pushback that you get. So, for example, one farmer in Barbados who was having a hard time, he had an infection on one of his banana trees. We started talking because he saw me growing stuff. He realized we're from the same place. We had a conversation, and at the end of it, he told me his banana trees are infected. He needs to get this thing for it, but he didn't have 87 Barbados dollars, which is 43 US dollars. He has no work. So we got him what he needed, and he got his banana trees. Like, I guess it started to work. And just 2 days ago, I was feeling pretty down, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, am I really going to be able to do this? Am I really going to be able to go as far as I say I am? And I was really, really in the dumps. And the thing that really brought me back to life was he texted me to tell me that the fertilizer that we got solved all the problems. He lost a few trees, but the majority of his trees were fixed and were fine. And that in itself, like, by pushing to do something that was the right thing to do in a situation, or that I could afford to do, gave me this energy, this boost of energy that I needed 2 weeks down the line. And that's like kind of as instant as karma gets in this real world. I would think that through being compassionate, this guy gives me more energy back than I put into that. That $40 US was like, Donald Trump paid for that, because he's giving me unemployment right now. So, so for me to give that to him, and then for the energy that I got back is worth probably $400. So compassion is the way to go, people, and eat eggs that are fresh.
Yeah. Well, when you can give to other people, you're also giving to yourself, and it is just the good thing to do. And, I also want to say that moments of self-doubt where you think, oh man, who do I think I am? Have I got myself in over my head? And,
right.
When you take on a commitment, there is all that fear of, what if I fail? What if I look stupid? What if I can't figure it out? But I think with determination, even, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you guys all think I know what I'm doing. I might look like I know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm figuring it out one step at a time, all the time. But, that's the thing. You start, and then you have these moments where you're like, oh, like, I remember the first time my first episode, I released my podcast, and I felt really overwhelmed and kind of emotional. And I started crying to my partner. He's like, what's wrong? Like, aren't you like happy? And I was just like, I don't know, like, what if I don't know what I'm doing? And, but now, like, what if people think I'm stupid? And now like it's out there and it's weird to think people are listening to me. And like, why do I like, I don't know, I had all these doubts about like what I have to say, the value of what I have to say. And, and that just kind of really struck me as, so what? Do it anyways. Do it anyways. And if you make a mistake, you learn from it, and maybe something doesn't work. Okay, reassess, try something else, and you just keep doing it. And like that in itself helps you to build that confidence and almost like ability to trust yourself. Because even though something might not work, and you fail miserably, you learn from it. You don't give up. You don't accept defeat. You keep going. And, I think that that's like the thing a lot of people don't ever start.
Right.
Because they're afraid.
Yeah.
We're all afraid.
We're all afraid, and we need to help each other to not be. It's a younger me was the same thing. I probably didn't do half the things I wanted to do because I was scared of failing. Mm-hmm. But as my life went on, the fact that I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do made me less of the best version of myself, I guess. And just confidently going ahead, not being scared to make a fool of myself, because I think I do that pretty well, and I quite enjoy it. And and embracing that is important. You have to be true to yourself, and we should really push people to just be their true inner selves, and that's it.
Yeah. And I think encouraging one another that, you can figure this out and you got this. And, a lot of people don't receive encouragement. And I think that kind of prevents people from, I don't know. I think it's also very difficult if you maybe have never experienced any kind of encouragement, and maybe your family dynamic has been maybe really traumatic and abusive, and you've had a lot of people really telling you you're never going to make it, and that's the story that you live by, right? And then you go out and you act that story out, even though it's not true, because just as much as you or I have the ability to do what we're doing, so does anybody else in their own unique way.
Right.
So yeah, that's where it can be kind of difficult. It's like the lies that we believe, and so this is part of what I'm going to be talking about in my book.
Book drop. Which I'm on the committee. I've been added to your committee, and I'm very thankful to be there, because it's exciting for me to see as it goes. Well,
thank you so much. I know I was like, who can I put on my committee here? And I was like, okay. I put together, that's the thing. If I put together a committee, then I am actually going to have the fire under my butt to write it. Otherwise, I'm working on a book, it can take you 10 years to finish your book. But I've also recently hired a book coach. So I'm going to be working with her just to kind of get my structure, because it's my first book. Again, people, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know completely what I'm going to say. I have an idea of what I'm going to say. I have my topics and chapters, I think, but that's all subject to change. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I'll get a bunch of 1-star reviews on Amazon, or maybe I'll become a bestseller. You don't know. Got to try.
You don't score any shots unless you shoot. So
exactly. Isn't that a Wayne Gretzky quote?
That is a Michael Jordan, and I think Wayne Gretzky also used it in a different wording. But both of them were big scorers. Both of them knew the idea: you got to shoot to score. So, also, my wife is a first-year writing professor at Barnard University, and she's a published writer. So, if you do need like editing help and stuff like that, she's out there too. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I would love to chat with her. That's awesome.
You can find her. I'm not going to drop her website unless she allows me to. So
fair enough. Right. So, okay. Well, I guess I want to ask you, because I'm gonna wrap it up fairly soon here. But so 2025 is your goal to be self-sustained. So do you have like a plan sort of mapped out of what that's going to look like year by year, or are you just winging it?
Oh, I am the king of the wing. So I kind of have an idea. I'm just going down the priority list, so I know I need to eat. So question number one is, what's the fastest thing I can grow to eat? Vegetables. I know I like meat. So what's the next thing I need to get is going to be chickens. Energy, solar power. So like it's very, very much jumbled in my mind, and it's why I'm using social media to hold myself accountable to it by posting my progress as it goes, and that makes a huge, huge difference because I will not fail publicly without at least getting part of the way. No.
Oh, I feel you. Put the pressure on yourself by getting you're like, how can I hold myself accountable? 8,000 people.
Right, exactly.
Whatever. You have 20 something.
Yeah, and that just bursted up out of nowhere because I started talking more about my truth and more about Barbados, and now it's 20,000, and it's yikes.
You're a sustainable influencer.
Oh God, I can't wait for So June 16th, 2025, I will be throwing my phone away. I will be at the best point I can be at as fully sustainable as I possibly can, and there'll be a big breakdown at the 5-year mark. But I will be getting rid of my phone, getting rid of all that stuff, so I have less than 5 years left. Car will be gone. Yep. Right now we downgraded to a hybrid. But we need it for now. Again, my wife she has her own way. She definitely supports me, but I'm not going to subject anybody else to what I'm doing. I'm not going to be self-righteous and tell people, you should be doing this. No.
You're like, come on, babe, we're going to make clothes out of leaves.
Right.
The Garden of Eden.
There you go.
She's like,
She might like it for the first week, and after that, it'd probably be played out. So, no, she supports me, and there's just kind of I'm just jumping into it, and I'm kind of like I'm treating it as a manic episode. So I've got 5 years to be completely manic about getting this done, and that's where I'm going to get. And then I'm going to throw the phone away, and hopefully I would have taught some people along the way. I'm also raising money for local farmers in Barbados, or people who are aspiring to be farmers, and that was inspired by my friend Roland, who is the farmer I helped with his banana trees. So I'm working with local businesses in Barbados to raise money to buy people who don't have jobs that want to grow their own food, the equipment they need to grow their own food. And if anyone wants to join me on my journey, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Ash Sustainable, ASH Sustainable. And I just launched my website, which is a work in progress, but it is live, some components of it. And it's ashsustainable.com. So
okay.
ASH Sustainable.
So, and so if people want to donate for essentially this nonprofit that you're creating with the farmers in Barbados,
yes.
How can people donate?
So if you go to the same website, ashsustainable.com, there's a link there. There's one that says Get Help. So if you are a farmer in Barbados, generally I'm starting out with Barbados, but if there's anybody who wants to grow their own food and they want help, you go to that website. There's a link, Get Help. You fill out a form, and I will get back to you. I'll have a conversation with you. And if it's in our means, I'll see what I can do to help you. But my major focus right now is Barbados and people in my immediate community. Then there's also a link to help. So you can volunteer if you're on the ground in Barbados. You can also help me by sharing my journey, sharing my page. And then there's also a link to donate on the website as well too.
Okay. Awesome. I know I was just thinking as the borders start to open up again and travel becomes available, maybe we'll have to come and make a trip out your way and come and see all the progress that you're making. Come and document it and promote.
Yeah. I'll come up and see you guys, and your guy will take me shoot some bow and arrows. So that'll be good.
Yeah, well, he just got a kind of, it's like a old Nissan Pathfinder, so that he's now got his own like hunting vehicle. And right. I told him, I was like, being inside this vehicle feels like an episode of Stranger Things. So I guess you'll be getting rid of your Netflix and HBO accounts as well when you're.
Oh God, don't remind me. That's why I'm giving myself 5 years, because it's not reasonable to think that someone can do it in one day, and I think that's a big problem. We have to realize that life is progress, and progress is not today to tomorrow. It's slowly making the changes as time goes on. So yes, eventually I will lose my HBO. I will lose my Netflix. But the truth is, recently I'm so busy watering plants and gardening and being mindful that when I watch these shows, I'm like, wow, so this is what they used to brainwash us. And then you start to think about it in a different way.
Yeah.
And, I'd rather spend time listening to your podcast, which has been fantastic, by the way. And
thank you.
And listening to people that make art and do things that I can be more close to and that have a more positive effect rather than watching people kill each other on TV.
Yes, I know. That's the thing. Most of the time, like we watch Modern Family, just for like a stupid laugh because it's so funny. But yeah, I'm the same way. Like it's what is on TV. It's like so degraded most of the time, anyways. And it's better to fill your mind with good things and be conscious about what you put in, as well as you were saying about who you surround yourself with. Like that is one of the things that I have loved about doing this podcast has been proximity. The people that I've been able to interview and chat with and, inspiring and incredible people. Like proximity is so important. You want to be around people that inspire you to be the best version of yourself, and you encourage each other, and you're like genuinely interested in what unique gifts you are providing and giving to the world. So I believe in you. I think that you can do this. I think this is so awesome. And I'm really excited to, watch as it all unfolds. And also I'm really looking forward to 5 years from now when I will come and visit you. And because you won't have any sort of technology for entertainment, you're going to be out with like the stick and the tire. The stick in the tire, or like the old bicycle wheel. The stick.
I'll have you you'll recite all your episodes that I've missed after 2025 to me, and I'll be the happiest person in the world. So
I'll bring you like an old Walkman or something with like a burnt cassette of like.
Oh yeah, the old mixtapes. Oh, I used to love those.
Oh yeah. Well. I want to say thank you so much for coming on and chatting. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing everything that you do. And I think that it's inspiring that you're able to give up the luxuries and see through all of the sort of illusion that so many people are kind of being hypnotized by. So I think that's really cool. And I also really want to say thank you for sharing what you have about mental health, because I know that I have listeners who are struggling with bipolar, and and I think that it's really inspiring for people to be like, hey, like he struggles, but look at all of the ass kicking that he's doing in life. And
I want to thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. I've enjoyed your work, and I was a little bit shocked when you decided that you wanted to talk to me. But yeah, if there are people out there that have mental problems and they want to reach out, again, I'm open to talking to anybody about it, and I'm happy to be it may not help, but I can relate. So, but yeah, I love your work. Thanks for having me here. And I'm happy that I've made a new friend in you, and I'm excited to see how the book comes along. And yeah, it's great things. Positive people together make positive lives. So
heck yeah. I want to become friends officially.
Boom. High five onto the camera.
Sweet. Ash, you're awesome. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much.
To you.
Okay. Bye. Well, that concludes another episode of the Shanti Ma podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation between Ash and I as much as I did. If you would like to become a member on Patreon, head on over to patreon.com/Shantima and become a patron. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can also support the show by supporting my good friends over at Love Braj and donating to their nonprofit. All your donations go towards feeding the hungry, clothing, shelter, food for the street cows and the street monkeys, cleaning up garbage, planting trees. They're really doing some great stuff over there. It's 100% nonprofit. I have so much faith in what they're doing. So that's why I am trying to get donations heading their way, because it's really beautiful what they're doing. And I think that after the conversation that I had with Ash today, that is definitely something that we should all be thinking more about during these times as we start moving into a new way of life. We need to remember to take care of one another. And we do this by opening our hearts, opening our minds, and figuring out a way that we can give back and serve. You can also support Ash's cause by getting in touch with him on his Instagram or his website. And you can definitely get involved in his project and give back to the people in Barbados and sustainability. So it's all up to you. I just am trying to encourage everyone to be generous and live each day trying to figure out how you can be a better person, how you can give back, and how you can ultimately serve all. Anyways, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to, well, not chatting with you because you're listening to me. I look forward to connecting with all of you. I love you. Thank you for supporting my show. Until next time, bye. Om Bhurmubhuva Svaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhahimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhurmubhuva Svaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhahimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Shanti Ma Podcast.